Today is Monday, Parashat Tazria, Metzora. Actually, we're going to be reading two parashiot this coming Shabbat, Parashat Tazria and Parashat Metzora. A lot of the parasha of this week, Tazria and actually Metzora, also speaks about an illness called tzara'at. It's, for lack of better words, in English, it's leprosy. It's a kind of a discoloration, it's kind of a skin illness. There could be also certain discoloration in clothing or in the house that comes as a result of lashon hara, of improper speech, of negative speech. The end of last week's parasha had to do with the ma'achalot, the types of food that are asur to eat and types of food that are permitted to eat. So there seems to be some kind of a connection between last week's parasha and this coming week's parasha. What is the connection? It has to do all, in last week's parasha, what comes into our mouth. This week is what goes out of our mouth. In other words, we have to be very careful what types of food we consume. But if you're very careful with what foods you consume, but you're not careful with what words come out of your mouth, then you really have not learned the full lesson. There are some people that may be very careful with the kosher food, but with their words they can kill a person just with words. You know, the Hachamim explained that the tongue is almost has the shape of a kind of a sword, that just with words you can actually like harm a person, just as if you were sticking a sword into him. Words can be offensive. Words can create prejudices about certain people. If someone doesn't know another person, you speak negatively about the other person, you created a false, improper idea about this person that the person has never met maybe. And not only when it's something that is not true, which is even worse, but even when it's something that is true but is negative about another person, it shouldn't be voiced unless sh'at hatzorech, when there is a need to avoid maybe harm or to avoid the person getting in trouble because he doesn't know that person that seems to be innocent actually has a track record of negative situations. So the idea of to be very careful with what comes out of our mouth is very important, not just what comes in terms of kosher food. And this is the connection, so to speak, between both things. Even Shlomo HaMelech said, the effort of the person is lefiv on his mouth, what he consumes and what he says, what comes out of his mouth. So that's the connection between the end of last week's parasha and the theme of this week's parasha that we're going to read, both Tazria and Metzora. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.